Hey, Joe.
Good morning.
How are you?
Doing well. Kind of got through a little bit of a rebranding transition on a website, and then got some feedback about brand messaging for product going to market. And now I need to hunker down and get a publish.
Are you trying to raise money?
I am open to it, but I'm at the crux where I'm pre-revenue, so the raise is either VC exit or more so, I think it'd be like partnerships with companies that have the risk management need and or where I see the go-to-market value stream is small businesses that are servicing Fortune 500 manufacturing and other companies. And they have to operate at an enterprise level and they're not quite there. So that's where
Yeah.
I'm thinking my product fits market. But it's certainly built to serve the Cargills.
So you haven't validated that yet.
I use it daily and it saves me at least 20% of my time. I couldn't do what I'm doing without it. You're right. I haven't validated the market, but I validated the tool use. I'm killing the spreadsheets and I love spreadsheets.
Yeah, I get that impression.
Good morning,
Yeah, I'm fine.
Anita.
Finally kill them. Good morning.
Yes, hello.
Morning.
Good
Hey,
to
Martin.
good to see you too. So nice. Sorry. So Joe, you're also getting self-employed.
I'm working on it and I use it for the tool that I'm building. I use for my day job and it saves me about 20% of my time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excellent idea. I always support people who want to become self-employed because it's just a different way of working.
It's even great that I work for someone that knows that I want to do that and they're cool with that.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. So yeah, we are a small group today. Somehow, I don't know. By the way, so next week, the 13th of November, I have the president of the Technical University of Munich here.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's not under the German Chamber of Commerce network probably because it's so short term that I'm not sure whether I can get that together in the 1 week that is left. And
Martin, did you say the 30th?
1-3, the 13th.
Oh, 13. Thank you.
And 1 week from now, today's the 6th. And yeah, so but he's quite cool. He's we're the same age and we studied together, so it's quite uncomplicated. He has a PowerPoint presentation, but actually I wanted to talk with him just for an hour, ask a few questions that are relevant. And these 60 minutes, they always pass so fast, right? So I'm not really convinced of this presentation format when we can ask questions and we have a very focused as an objective, I would say. And my first question is always when we talk about university and innovation, is a university really doing innovation, or is it more in an ideation pre-innovation phase? And And the answer of matrix comes in handily. Rich introduced by you many years ago, or some
Yeah,
years ago.
right. Right. Right.
Yeah, and yeah, the funny thing was when I talked with him a few days ago, then he said, "Hey Martin, I was so busy last week because we had our excellence presentations." And I said, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, we need to lay out our 5 years plan, and then a committee would decide whether we get the funding for the 5 years or not." And I said, wow. The- and so all the risk is preloaded, right? So they need to do the right things when they start off, and then for the rest of the time, there's no risk. The professors just have to more or less follow that plan and then deliver what they research and publish a number of papers and then yeah and then give so many PhDs and yeah, that's the system basically of the last century. And I don't think that this holds for the long run, because we have declining populations and for I'm always taking my son as an example. He works for a startup in the Bay Area and he does that from Singapore. And he is making more money at age 23 than I made before I even became 35 years old. And
Yeah,
so
that's not uncommon.
mm, yeah, and you know, as a father, I really don't envy him. I'm very happy for him. So
Yeah.
I just yeah, and I support that, and I say, hey, just make hay when the sun is shining. I mean, and you can always go later for a degree if you really want one at one point, because he's very smart. That's why he's making so much money, because he's using AI and doubled his no, quadrupled his work speed, and he made four other people obsolete. And at age 23, he's working in as a after sales software engineer without ever having studied computer science. Just with what he learned from me and his peers when he played computer and programmed from age 14 onwards until the army time. So that's
But you know, Martin, in my opinion, you know, a degree per se or degrees doesn't matter anymore.
it
I
doesn't,
mean,
right?
I
Yeah.
mean, since COVID, that's all flipped over, right?
Okay.
Companies now value, you know, knowledge versus, you know, degrees, right?
Yep.
So
Inclusive my own company. So we say every employee should know how to express the value that he brings to the table for the company in terms of money. So every 6 months we talk about that. And if that value is is positive versus the costs, then this is a welcome employee. And I believe that every sound entrepreneur, every soundly guided company would have the same criteria. I mean, maybe unless you run a law firm where you need a law degree in order to do submissions at court. But even then, it's sufficient if you have one or two people who have that qualification, if the other can do the same work. And most of it is AI today. So, and what I also found, I mean, I've trained more than 200 individuals in the area of AI for drafting better patents, and maybe half of them don't even have a patent attorney degree, and still they're, they're doing very good work for their company using AI. So
yeah, I mean, the playing field has completely changed.
yeah,
You know,
I would,
I think a lot of bigger companies, you know, like my former company, you know, they're still hung up on, you know, to progress through the company, you have to have, you know, a certain degree, you know, like, you know, an MBA to become a business unit manager and general manager and so on and so forth. And
yeah, but I mean that there's a correlation, right, between capability and the degree. So it's one way to pre-select that. But um, I remember about before COVID, something like 7 years ago, I went to Trenton in New Jersey, and
lucky you.
Yeah, actually, it was very interesting because there's a Thomas Edison University,
Yeah.
and that's the university where the entire Navy is doing remote degrees. And I wanted to see that because I wanted to prepare the field for my kids, so that because I mean, next week when we are there, I'm an alumni from the Technical University of Munich, and I remember that for the first 2 years, I did the whole bachelor study as a remote study. I remember that I could count the numbers of times I was at the university during these 10 years, during these first 2 years is less than 10 fingers, less than 10 times. And what I did is I got the old exams for all the subjects that you have, and then the 2 months before the final exams, you sit down on your pants and then you study and you solve the old exams, and then you're well prepared for the new exams. And I passed with a B, which is I find enough for a bachelor. And then in the masters, I really did what I could, and I was among the best, maybe 10% of students, and that, for me that was more than enough. And I worked while I did all this, so did this, and the guy that I met at the Trenton and at this university, the Thomas Edison University, was a very friendly guy, and we discussed this, and then I shared my opinion on studying and on degrees with him, and then he was very positively surprised because he said, "Well, I should interview you and record you and then play this to the parents because ultimately today nobody would ask me about what I did in order to get my bachelor in mechanical engineering 38 years ago or so. Nobody cares." And it's still considered as a degree. And my guess is if you today in a time with declining numbers, with declining workforce, I believe the best is to get to do some work as soon as possible until you see that you hit the ceiling, and then you can still start your remote degree. Of course, if you want to have a career with, let's say, in a company like Siemens with 300,000 people, I believe it's quite hard to do that without a degree. And ultimately, you would somehow get thrown under the bus, and then everybody would say, no wonder he couldn't make it because he doesn't have a degree. It was a bad choice in the first place.
Yeah. And that's basically my old company, I think, is in that kind of mode. Um, but we weren't anywhere near the size of Siemens, but we were 60,000 employees, right?
But that's about a third of the size of Siemens.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but that's the same order, the same magnitude, I would
Yeah,
say.
and my point was going to be is that the thinking is the same as you just described, right? To land a position and become a manager without a degree there is not possible.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
But it's basically shifting, and companies like that will have to shift to more of the Amazon, Google, you know more venture-based kind of approach of it's what value can you bring, and demonstrate that value to us, and that's what matters
Yes.
for the future, not what you learned in stat 101 and fluid mechanics or whatever, right?
Yes. Yeah, but again, when I think back now with my knowledge, I'm at yeah, I'm at what for other people would be the end of the career and they prepare for retirement. But I don't, of course. But And I realize now today, if I had just relied on my engineering degree and my knowledge as an engineer, I would have been super bored in a company like Siemens. And despite having all the prerequisites for making a career there.
The fact that you said that you would be bored,
Yeah, I mean,
I
if
find
you,
that amusing
why?
because they deploy very interesting things in in a variety of so many different fields. But yet there's a perspective that once it gets to be so large of a corporation that your innovation ends up getting lost, or your ability to make influence ends up being noise.
Yeah, I mean,
Th-
just
Say,
ask,
Joe.
yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Michael.
Martin, Joe, I'd like to jump in.
Yes.
So I'm 55 years out of my engineering degree, Martin. So maybe 15 years more experience than you. But think of it this way, guys. There's consumer companies, there's industrial companies. Siemens is certainly industrial, and Procter and Gamble for toothpaste is consumer. Then going down the other axis, there's low, medium, and high technology. So any engineer, Martin, I, I I find it difficult to imagine an engineer that wouldn't end up if you work for somebody else, let's say, not yourself. If you work for somebody else, if you're going to be bored, maybe you're in a consumer company, you should be an industrial, or maybe you're in a low tech company and need to be in high tech. Those are the six cells of the matrix. So when you talk about Siemens, I've known them as a client for 34 years now, many projects, Martin, that you and I spoke about. And I certainly consider them as having all three: low tech, boring products, medium tech, and high tech.
So,
So maybe you just don't think of the company as having a high tech place for you.
Michael,
I'm
Michael,
sure they do.
You would be surprised. For me, low tech is not boring. It
Well,
and
then what's boring? What's boring? Being an engineer, you mean?
no, I mean boring is when you don't see that you have personal development.
Well, Siemens is loaded with opportunities, Martin. Come on. It's the number one company in Germany after all, aren't they?
I don't think so. And but
Well,
what I
they're
see,
close to number one in sales worldwide. I mean, Siemens, I think of three times the size of ABB or other giant companies. Who's bigger than Siemens in turnover in sales? That's
actually, I-
headquartered in Germany.
Rockwell Automation.
No. That's headquartered in Germany.
actually the size is not the determining factor. The question is when you put into a, I mean, I'm number one. When that's what I learned when I went into this innovation stuff because I wanted to. For some reason I ended up being a patent attorney at a very young age because there was a recession and so there was even for an overqualified guy with like me there was no work and so what I did is I enrolled into distance learning law school and then became an auxiliary to a patent attorney and I became that. And then when I look back, that was good, was not bad. And only at a much later time, I thought, hey, I have so many inventions. Now I want to find out why are all those sole inventors, as I also could have been one, why are they going bankrupt? Because I lost client over client over client, and because they why? Because they didn't know how to innovate. That's why I thought about that. I must change that. And as a patent attorney, you're not trained for that. So, and then I found out people who started a career in companies like Siemens, right, as an engineer, and then and then I found out there are three different people. There are the engineers who really thrive in doing what they do, but they always fail when they open a business. And then there are the entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs always fail because ultimately they cannot deliver. They are sales guys. And then there's the manager type, and the manager type cannot survive without having a technician who does the work and an entrepreneur who does the sales. So you need the three to work together. That was my first insight that I had. And then I was looking, what am I? And then I would say something between a technician and an entrepreneur and a manager. And then the longer I do that, the more I'm convinced that if you put me into a company like Siemens, that people would after a year or so would say, "Hey, this Martin is impossible to manage. Is unpredictable. You cannot you give him something, yes, he does it, but he would never be a good engineer because he's bored by developing the homework, the system. And as a sales guy, probably not bad, but then also bored because at one point in time everything is done. And as a manager, uh, to be very honest, I'm a lousy manager. Why? Because I hate managing people. Yeah. So, and the more I look at that, and when I talk
Good
now,
morning. Good morning.
say again. Yeah, and when I have now a president of a technical university in front of me, they don't even think in these categories. That they think
Say,
more.
Martin,
Yes.
Martin, I want to give you, okay, Rich knows about this, so I'm going to share something with you. One of my recent projects that has a very good audience at Siemens has to do with intelligent traffic systems. And a key guy also went up to a Korean truck manufacturer. So Siemens division was called Cities and Infrastructure. And Siemens Mobility is headed by this guy that I've introduced Rich to. So he's now at a Korean company, but think of intelligent highways, think of automated traffic signals, think of sensors alongside the Autobahn that can count every vehicle, every truck, that can do truck caravans. So this guy has been a client at Siemens for over 3 or 4 years now. He's now moved over to a Korean truck company, and he wants a proposal for anti-jackknifing. So if you're a car guy, so anti-jackknifing is a big problem looking for a solution. And this Siemens guy has been entirely involved with intelligent traffic systems, and now at Hyundai, he's trying to work on anti-jackknifing.
Okay. Now, please,
So
please tell
that
me.
should be high tech. That's high tech for you,
Yeah,
Mark.
but high tech or low tech? I tell you a secret. At age 24, after I had my bachelor complete, at that time it was not called bachelor, but it was called pre-diploma. So, yeah, but it's equivalent to a bachelor or even a bit more. Then I hired with Siemens Energy, and they sent me to Brazil right into the jungle for setting up a water turbine. And I was a second engineer and that's really low tech. And and I had a group of 100 men for creating a water channel in the jungle, and I liked it. I had a workhorse like a cowboy, but at one point this is boring. And then moving me to high tech would not have helped. It was just this was the wrong place. And when studying, nobody has told me about that. And actually, that I'm more interested with the talking with the president of a technical university. Why do you not tell people that study engineering more about life out there? And and it ultimately evolves around innovation. I would assume, right? When they say that they have a 1 week where all the profs would sit together and think about what they would present and what is the 5 year plan for achieving where to go, what is the goal for my research, and so on, so on, so. Why why are these students never prepared for real life? And what you are telling me, Michael, is that you give someone an exciting new gadget, and then he will play and around until becomes a project. That's not how innovation works. And
Well, Martin, here, you mentioned hydro turbine. You're familiar with Siemens Voith Hydro. Voith Hydro has giant hydro
yeah,
power plants, and they have mini hydro for
and
rivers in India. So
now
that's
guess
a very
what?
exciting. It's a
Now
very
guess,
exciting
now,
business.
now guess what? Voigt is our client in my firm. We work for Voigt.
Okay, so why didn't you have interest for this hydro project in Brazil with Voigt Siemens? It's a great opportunity. Why
Yeah,
didn't you
yeah,
do it?
I enjoyed it. I was there for more than a year. Was quite cool. But at one point in time, is yeah, the job would be now you get a bigger project in another place, a remote place on the earth, and then you do that
Did,
until you.
did you build a dam in Brazil, or were you on mini hydro for rivers? What were you doing with hydro
No,
in Brazil?
the dam was done by someone else. I was in charge of the feeder to the turbine ultimately, and so. So yeah, and it was actually more management post when you have to manage 100 men to achieve something on a and it's more logistics management than anything to do with but it was cool, right? Because it's when you're 25 and you have a workhorse, I find that very cool. So um, I mean, I don't want to tell too much about that because that's not the main point that I want to make. What I want to make, the point that I want to make is the following. Next week, we have a professor of a technical university. And by nature, the engineering students that are in his university, they are either technicians who love to tinker, there are entrepreneurs who love to sell and solve problems and whatever. And then there are managers who love to um, organize people to achieve something. And the all those three types they study engineering and then they leave with a diploma and then they are thrown into the cold water and you can apply from companies of one or two or opening your own company as Joe is now doing to companies of 250,000. And it's an entirely different world between the two. And still you have the same degree. And the,
Hey, Martin.
yes, go ahead.
Hi. Yes, my name's Coleman. Joe invited me to these, and I'm finding them interesting. I just started recently joining them. But one thing I don't know if you've heard of. We'll say I think they're arguably called aptitude tests. There's many sites. One that I've heard of is uscience.com, I believe. That helps you. You go through the test. It's more of a personality test and kind of what you're into, but it helps you shape at least an understanding of an area that you might be interested in and areas of focus that kind of keep your interest. That might help shape, in my opinion, you take those types of tests to help shape what areas you'd want to consider. Say you like tinkering, but it gives you more information of like what areas of tinkering does that mean? For example, does that mean you like tinkering in like aerospace versus life sciences versus whatever? It just gives you a little bit more. I think I haven't done the test myself yet. I plan to be honest. But I think that's an area that people don't think about as they go through their college career or their early stages in education, that maybe they should take some of those types of tests or evaluations to understand, yes, I'm interested in these areas. Yes, I like these types of challenges, but I don't know how that shapes my career or where I focus my drive.
Yes, sounds very good. And I've done a lot. If you look around on my website, the IP Lawyer Tools, then you would find some talks at universities about that. And I even enrolled into clinical psychology to learn more about doing those tests, and I'm quite good. I've developed tests myself, and I can tell you what people are into. What I can tell you is from my experience when we talk about innovation and you map that, you have people who are good in incremental innovation, means it's like school. You get the homework, the next day you show up with the result and everybody would check, is my result right or not? And then you're good. And that's what engineering schools are for. You get training in solving homework. And then there are very, very few of them, maybe less than 5%. They are good in non-incremental innovation. And those people need a different environment. And you cannot put a non-incremental guy on incremental work. That's where I'm coming from because I'm a non-incremental guy.
I agree with that thought process, actually. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And you cannot put an incremental guy into non-incremental innovation. And what is now non-incremental innovation? Non-incremental innovation is is in the Ansoff matrix, where you develop both the product and the market, or the people that you look at when you try to solve a problem. And then there, within that quadrant, which is a high risk quadrant, by the way, there is also a distinction. One is I mean, Rich, your transfer innovation is non-incremental, but it's more towards the low risk part of it. But it's not a breakthrough or breakout or whatever. That's the highly non-incremental innovation part. And
Well, that's true, but it can lead to a radical or breakout of
oh
a
yes,
moonshot
oh yes,
in a different environment.
yes, yes. And again, you need the people, because if you put an incremental guy on that, he would never do some breakthrough stuff because they are not used to think like that. And or they're not used to think is even wrong. They're not made up to be like that. They are not born with, I don't know, non-incremental innovation in mind. Many have the seeds of being a non-incremental innovation guy, but very few make it to that state. And some
Say, Martin,
Yes.
Martin, are you, in your psychology world, I sent you a link a couple of weeks ago for the term polymath. Now,
yes,
polymath is really good at innovation that's not incremental. So the
yeah,
personality traits of a polymath really fit. And I'd be curious with Krogman's comment for students to take a aptitude test and so forth. But a polymath explains the prodigies like Da Vinci, Edison, Einstein, Copernicus on my Polish side.
okay.
So to be a polymath, you've got a valence to be a much better innovator. And a serial innovator is more than likely having some traits of a polymath. Are you familiar
Okay.
with the term in psychology, Martin?
Yeah, sure. And I know
Yeah.
some polymath, but my experience is the following. I'm doing this for a very long time. Those people who say about themselves that they are polymaths are very seldom polymaths. They they think that they are, but they're not. The outcome is almost zero. They do a lot of things, different things, and it's seldom success. You can
You
seldom
can do it
see.
ex post, but Martin, you could do it after they're out there for 30 years in their career. You know, people didn't recognize Edison or Da Vinci as a polymath until they started doing great things in several different fields all at once while playing
What,
music and
okay,
sculpture and all this stuff.
what I can say is that there are people that are very successful, and when you look at them in hindsight, they are successful in many different areas. And success, as I understand, as is also a definition of innovation, can be measured in terms of money. If you if you just invent for the sake of inventing, you're never an innovator. You're at best an inventor. And and yes, you can do a lot of things, right? But if you don't make money with it, or you don't even try to make money with it, then you're not an innovator. And that goes back. Polymath, as I understand, is someone who is an innovator, who is successful, who changed something. And that goes in line with the definition of innovation. There's even an ISO standard for that. And it also comes with but they define it in a bit broader, in a sense of being useful, or doing something useful without useful. It's not necessarily pegged to money. Although I would say, if there's no money made, then you're an inventor only and not an innovator. And
Well,
that's
Martin, here, I send you the Forbes article. The title is In the Age of Artificial Intelligence, Polymaths Are Back in Vogue. So some of the AI people I've been working with in the last year or so,
yeah.
I've talked with them recently about this Forbes article about polymaths. And a lot of companies that are
Mhm.
recruiting AI people are looking now for polymaths. I don't know why, but they are.
I, again, Michael, I believe a polymath, if should be measured at the end of the life by the success.
Well,
If you
AI is too new, though, Martin. It's too new. They can't look at them 20 years out because there is no 20 years in AI,
Yeah, but
not to speak of.
Why is it important that you label someone with polymath? It doesn't bring
Well,
any.
read the Forbes is not a small magazine. You're familiar with it. So Ben Franklin, they give all these examples, and the recruiters I've spoken with about this topic, some worked with me at ABB.
Mhm.
They're looking at these prodigies, and they're going after signs and symptoms that these people are polymaths, like a Ben Franklin or Leonardo da Vinci, and they want them on the AI team. Your son might be one.
Okay, but what I can tell you is, I mean, what a pity that he's not here. But there's Bruce Wojcik, one of the co-authors of the Serial Innovators book, which is a must, I believe, for everyone who is into psychology and also innovation. He told me once a story where he got very upset and withdrew from a project because they was a very large company and they wanted to find the serial innovators. And he has developed 4 criteria. These people need to have some superpowers in 4 different areas. And and it's also that in a Chris de Ahmed, another serial innovator that I know, and he was also here before. He coined this rule. He says in a company of one, there's one serial innovator. In a company of 10, there's one serial innovator. A company of 100, there's one serial innovator. In a company of 1,000, maybe 2 or 3 serial innovators. In a company of 10,000, 1 or 0 serial innovators. So, because they're driven away by the bureaucracy that great larger structures have. And so they wanted to find Bruce and his client or the person the company he worked for. They wanted to find a few serial innovators because they believed in his concept, and they tried something like a large number of people. I don't remember, was it 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever, and then the harvest was very meager. So they decided to water down the criteria, and that was when Bruce didn't want to be part of that project anymore. So this is about what we're talking, and I seriously doubt that a HR department can, from a stream of incoming job applications, sieve out the polymaths. Is because there are not many of them. There are very few, 1 in 1,000 or so, 1 in 10,000, and from even in our firm or in my firm, when we put out job offers, then we receive something like 400 applicants or 400 job applications, and that's considered a lot in my branch. So, and would never expect a serial innovator being among those 400 because the number is too small. You need, I believe, 100,000, and then we can talk about 10 or maybe 20. But if you just do 400, then the likelihood is that you have one is less than 10% in those 400. And that's why I don't really like this term polymath nor the concept of it. And I would rather look for people who carry the seed of becoming a serial innovator in them, and then one of those is the urge to measure the success of the project in terms of money, being different from a tinkerer. And I, I believe that a technical university would be the perfect place, number one, to create that insight, because it would help the students to have a better life with the knowledge that they acquire. And two, also to sieve out those people, right? And then first you would get the inventors. That's maybe 30% of 1/3, right? The inventors, because necessarily they are technicians and they love to tinker and so. And then in a technical university, at least I would say 1/3 would be that category of tinkerer. And among those tinkerers, there would be maybe 1% or 2 that have the seed or carry the seed of being a serial innovator, or maybe 10% of those, so 3% in total, and then help those people to discover what they can achieve and how important they can be for innovation. And also to not be arrogant, because that's also what I see. People, and I'm telling my serial innovators that we work for when I work with them, to not be arrogant with respect to the non-incremental engineers, because you need them to run a production, or you need them to run the sales support engineering part. Because if you cannot, non-incremental innovation is always that is a bit like that. You have a box with a machine inside, and the box has a window and a color and a handle. And now the sales comes up and say, "Hey, I could sell more of that box with a machine. Can you paint it green? And the window shouldn't be at that location, but on the side wall. And also, I want it in 220 volts and not 110, because then I have a new market pocket that I could serve." And then you would know as a CTO, I give it to that engineer because I'm very sure within 5 working days, he presents the new machine, and also a way of not to change too much in the production line so that we can do those 4,000 machines that are sold. And that's an extra revenue of 40 million, let's say. And if you give this work to a non-incremental engineer, a serial innovator, these people get bored and they resign, because if you don't give them the real stuff that they want, and it's not only playing with new technology or good technology, then they would look for a job where they can solve problems that they think they are worth being solved, and not just sourcing a new color, a paint in a new color. See where I'm coming from. So as a president of a technical university, I believe that this selection, or at least the insight, should be taught or maybe even practiced.
This seems like a great idea as its own educational intervention, if you will.
Yeah, sure, maybe. I learned it at a very old age. I started to think about it maybe 5 years ago. That's 30 years after I finished my engineering degree. And I worked as a patent attorney during all that time. So how weird is that? And I never heard of it before. And I'm wondering why is this not taught? Why is this not common knowledge among institutions that create innovators?
Well, I think there's another facet to that, Martin. And
Go ahead.
one of the things that I had talked to a couple different professors about at different institutions over the years, and that was, basically mirroring the business department with the engineering department, because most engineers come out of engineering school with zero business acumen.
Yes.
And the majority, like 99.9% of the business students, come out without any kind of engineering, background, right? And so you have a problem when it comes to collaborating, in a work environment,
Yes.
at a company like my old company, and or at a Siemens, or even a smaller company, right?
Yes.
I mean, you got the technical, the nerd, and then you got the finance guy, or you got a marketing guy, and the engineer says, well, the marketing guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and he wants pink roses on everything, and we only put daisies on stuff, right?
Yes.
So it's a fundamental shift that needs to take place, where engineering and business departments need to function together and have some projects. And I was quite surprised because I was, during one of my consulting projects, I happened to be at a institution in Ohio, actually. And lo and behold, they had a very similar program to what I was envisioning, right, where they were, had a capstone project, and basically it was an engineering, driven program along with business elements to it.
Yeah.
And then to your earlier point about the three types of people, I think that there's I'm not a degreed engineer. I learned all my engineering in a 2-year technical hands-on electronics training.
Good enough, Rich.
During,
You
yeah,
can be a
during high
social innovator with that. You don't even need a degree.
Yeah, I understand that. And when I did my medical device company, I had the vision, right? I was the manager. I had the vision, and I had enough technical acumen to be able to understand systems and boundary diagrams and be able to put that down on paper and explain to the engineers I hired, right? And basically looked for those serial innovators to be part of the team, because I wanted, out of the box thinking, right, for my medical device.
Yes.
And different approaches, right? And I found that, right? So, it's hard to just label, somebody, whether that's a polymath or whether it's a genius or whatever. And, every company, somewhere in that company, somebody comes up with, hey, the new buzzword is going to be polymath. So we're all going to be we're all looking for polymaths, right?
Yes.
And that's the new thing. That's the the bright shiny object for the month, right?
Okay. Yes. And what a nonsense, right? And as you sarcastically said, shiny object. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
hey, Martin, Rich. Okay, let's back up a second. There aren't HR people in giant companies running around in the halls. This is a more subtle, and it's a nuance lately just for AI. But I'm going to go back to what you said about schools,
Hello?
Martin. MIT has Sloan School, and it's at a renowned engineering place. All right, Stanford in California, and Martin.
And with
your
what
son
company
probably
are you
knows-
calling?
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, so Stanford, what you're talking about, Rich, has been done about 20 or 30 years ago, and there aren't
And
too
what
many
company are you
universities.
calling from?
Our company.
Hey, Joe, mute your
Hey, Joe.
phone call. Mute your mic. Hey, Michael, I'm very
Yeah.
aware of what you're describing at MIT, at Stanford. I'm not talking about Stanfords and MITs and University of Illinois, and I'm talking about other smaller institutions.
Well, IIT, where I went, is small, Rich. You know IIT. So it's the Midwest. It's the Midwest of MIT's approach. It's a loaded place for the best engineers to go, but it's also Stewart School, which is piggybacking on the idea of MIT and Sloan School. So there's smaller places that are doing your hybrid, and it's a winning combination. You're not an engineer, but I'll remind you, Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to get an engineering bachelor's. Martin can attest to this. The reason companies require the degree is it takes the 4 years, and you might be able to do some of it, but unless you sit through the 200 quarter hours that engineers sit through for 4 years, you're not going to get hired as an engineer. They simply won't do it. There's legal ramifications. Forget becoming a professional engineer. That's very legal. But even to join an automotive company or an aerospace company or someone like Emerson, you have to have it to have a title of engineer. It's like being a surgeon. You got to go to medical school first. So, and the 10,000 hours of MBA school, Martin, you didn't do an MBA, but I think it's pretty clear that the 10,000 hours that Gladwell talks about, you'd have to sit through the 20 classes, and TUM may not offer it, but I'm sure there's MBA schools like INSEAD in Europe that you could still go to at your ripe middle age. You know, it takes the 10,000 hours in each or the 6 years to do both of them together. And that combination leads to more patents than any other combination in the patent office. Engineers, for whatever reason, Martin, there's an 80-20 rule. 80% of patents are by degree engineers or chemists. If I wish Roland was here, you know, you can't get around uh, uh, the education to become a medical devices expert without being an engineer, a pharmacist, or a biologist. You've got to be like a Roland to end up with a serial inventor capability in the
Okay,
world
Michael,
of pharma.
fun fact, 100% of patent attorneys are engineers or scientists. So,
Well, that's shame on them for sitting in a patent office or a patent firm. They should go out and practice engineering. I mean,
whatever.
it would be
No,
I'd be bored
just a,
stiff being a patent
it's just a, no,
examiner.
what I want to say, that the world is not divided in MBAs and engineers. So, I mean, there are,
Well, unfortunately, HR departments who write job specs put it in their job spec as a must-have for 90%
no,
of the positions.
life has many more colors than just that. What I want to say, where we started, next week, we have the president of a university in our and that university is I would say is famous in the area of engineering in the world. So every engineer would know that, same as MIT and same as a few others, Caltech, and you name it. So that there are maybe 20 or so. Now let me reduce that to the Western world, because now the Eastern world has their own ecosystem of engineering schools. So, and he's here, and what I spoke with my team today, what I heard is that he plans to give us a presentation, a slides presentation. And you know me, if what I really, I wouldn't say I hate it, but when I'm a bit sad always is when people come here with a slide presentation, because then they have a message and I just want to fill the time. When we, as we sit here, have so much experience and background and knowledge about innovation that if we meet someone who touches innovation on a daily basis, such as a president of such an engineering school, we would know to ask questions, right? That are normally you wouldn't find in the internet. I would assume so. So at least I have lots of questions like this one. So that was my problem when I finished the school there. I didn't know what I like and what I should do. I believe that's a serious problem for an engineering school. So what are you doing about? What do you know about that? What is it? Do Have you ever thought about that? Or are you stuck in your developing the next 5 years plan for what you get funding or whatever? Is it really such that a president of a technical university doesn't have time, or maybe he has time, but there's no demand for thinking about such questions? That's what I would like to know. Not about what is the plan of technical university for the next 5 years. Actually, I'm quite sure that it's interesting what they do, but how would it, number one, how would it help the students to have a useful, fruitful life? And number two, how would it help the people at the university to not get bored? And number three, how would that help the bigger goal of the country that they're working in? Because obviously that is paid by tax money. And so how is this linked? So I would rather expect a president to have the whole picture and have answers to such questions than telling us what robot taxi they're planning for 5 years down the road, self-driving car or whatever, or other stuff. So yes, it's interesting, but not so much in our context, because we talk about how innovation is done and not so much what innovations are we doing. Did I make myself clear? But I'm not sure because it may be.
I get it, but Martin, I think you need to communicate that to him
Yes.
so that, he knows what our areas of interest are and what we bring to the table and the types of talks that we have, right? So,
Yes. Do you agree with what I said, or would you be happy if he just presents a table with a research project? I mean,
no, to me, this is just me speaking, but I'm sure others have a different opinion. But what I'd like to learn from him is, basically the direction of how he sees innovation and growth, being evolving and being developed within TUM.
See? Yeah, I agree. It's very
Say,
interesting.
Martin, let me say one other thing here, okay? I think the term heuristic and stochastic on innovation should not disappear. In other words, I don't think in engineering school you can teach people how to be a serial innovator. I think it's something that's both you're born with, and I
Yeah, of
think
course.
to put
Michael,
tools in your toolbox.
if
Tools in your toolbox are an
Michael,
engineering degree part.
if you say teach someone to become a serial innovator is comparable with teach someone to have blue eye color or have
Yeah,
blonde hair.
I agree, but there's also a randomness to it, a eureka moment in the minds of these serial inventors. I think sometimes they invent while they're having dinner, while they're shaving in the morning, while they're on vacation, while they're kissing their kids goodnight. So, I think heuristic, the random aspect, and stochastic are the two terms that
Okay.
there's something, not only can it not be taught, but I think there's things that happen for eureka moments that could be,
Okay.
quantum. It could be quantum communication with other serial inventors who've died 1,000 years ago. I don't know where it comes from, but Leonardo da Vinci is the epitome of a
Uh,
serial innovator,
Okay,
right?
my insight from working in that field is that serial innovators never invent a gadget and then look for a market for the gadget. Serial innovators always look for problems, I mean real problems that are worth their time to be solved. And once they come up with a solution, they would test the market and find out, does this solve your problem? And if not, then they wouldn't redesign the machine, but they would find out why is it not solving your problem, and that result from that investigation would change the design, not a random
Okay,
or
Martin, I'd call that demand side, the Mustang versus the Edsel. Talk to the customer, and Iacocca designed the Mustang based on the problems to be solved or the opportunities with customers. But take the jet engine, that's supply side. No customer you could talk to flying a propeller aircraft as a pilot or passenger could have invented the jet engine. That's supply side. Okay, so there are things just like the CRISPR technology and biotech, or just like the first microchip. You're not going to ask a customer of a UNIVAC to come up with a microprocessor. It took a supply side person at IBM or Intel to think of a microprocessor. A customer can't invent that.
I don't want to open that barrel now, Michael, because that is a bit like looking at innovation from two different sides. Is a bit like being a capitalist or a socialist, and there's
Well,
a
I
divide.
just want to urge you, think of the supply side, not just the demand side, Martin. The
There's a,
supply side invented power steering. A
there's,
customer didn't invent power steering.
it's like Keynesian finance and Austrian school finance. There's a divide between the two, and you find similar situations in all areas of life. And it depends. there is one group of people who say my glass is half full, the other says it's half empty, and the same you find in innovation. There are people that come from the supply side. I mean, what I understood is from Frank Mattes that Steve Jobs doesn't fall into his theory, so he's out because Steve Jobs was someone who said, okay, the market is too stupid. They don't yet realize what they need, and I will give it to them. And then
There you go. There you go. That's supply side.
yeah, sure. But unfortunately, I've in more than 30 years of my life never met even one single inventor who's like that.
Oh,
It's like,
I've met hundreds, Martin. I've met hundreds. So you haven't been around them like I have for 50 years.
yeah, maybe I need 15 more years to find my first one then, or maybe I deter them or whatever.
I met many in my 20s and 30s. They're not all recent. Some of them I know have 25 or 50 or hundreds of patents at HP or General Motors. You know them after talking with them for 5 minutes. You know that they're polymaths. You know that they're innovators. They're serial innovators. All you got to do is have a beer with them. You'll know.
Okay. People, we are at the end of our hour. I will close now. So next week we have the Technical University of Munich president, and I will try to contact him before to find out and direct the talk a bit into the direction that we are interested. If you have more questions to ask, please post them into the review of the meeting of today, and I will make sure that he would see those questions, and hopefully we don't have a PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
It's the most boring thing that I can imagine, I would say. Okay, thank you all.
Okay.
See you next
See ya.
week. Thank you so
Take
much.
care. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.